Good evening. It's taken the best part of 2 weeks, but finally the American Secretary of State arrived in the Middle East today to try to see if there was any chance of a ceasefire. No hopeful noises yet. Indeed, preliminary indications from Hezbollah representatives suggest they're not keen on what she had to say. The violence was as bad as ever. Tim Huell reports.
Nearly 2 weeks into the conflict, on the Lebanese-Israeli border, it's still the guns that are talking. Israel hasn't yet launched a full-scale invasion of Lebanon, but hundreds of its troops have continued to cross the frontier, and the signs are they're meeting unexpectedly intense resistance from Hezbollah. 10 Israeli soldiers were badly injured today, and 2 more reported killed in clashes with the militia group. And 2 Israeli airmen died in a helicopter crash south of the border. In Lebanon itself, Israeli raids killed at least 7 people. But at least in the capital, Beirut, serious diplomatic forces moved in for the first time. An unannounced visit by US Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. It was a moment the Lebanese have desperately waited for, though the language the two sides are using still isn't the same. The Lebanese Prime Minister, Fouad Siniora, wants an immediate ceasefire. Dr. Rice wants a sustainable one, and her message that a quick end to the fighting simply isn't enforceable was repeated today by one of America's chief allies.
Who could possibly watch the pictures of innocent civilians being killed? There are also, incidentally, innocent civilians killed in Israel too, without wanting this to stop now. But it has to stop on both sides. And it's not going to stop on both sides unless a plan is in place to make it stop. And that's what we're working on.
The opportunity's there because Israel now appears to accept it can inflict damage on Hezbollah but not defeat it militarily. It appears to accept, too, that the Lebanese state is too weak to disarm the militants. That job, Israel now believes, can only be achieved by a new international force in Lebanon. In the past, it's usually opposed the idea of strong multinational forces on its borders, but the shift in its thinking mirrors a shift in the Arab world, too. Saudi Arabia, whose Foreign Minister Prince Saud Al Faisal was in Washington yesterday, is one of several Arab states dominated by Sunni Muslims, which, like Israel, feel threatened by Hezbollah and its brand of Shiite militancy.
There is a sea change in Arab attitudes vis-à-vis this particular conflict. In a conversation with this Saudi official, he told me we are on the same page with Israel in this conflict, and also, surprisingly, he said, by default, Israel managed to remove all the threats we faced throughout history. From Nasser in 1967, they defeated him. From Saddam Hussein's nuclear reactors, and the Israelis knocked him down. From that Shia threat that's coming to us from Iran, and the Israelis seem to be handling it. We are very surprised that we would be on the same page with the Israelis.
But even if there's widespread pressure for international action in Lebanon, no one yet knows what the exact mandate will be. One crucial thing to decide is the geographical limits of a new international force. Would it operate only in the border strip, about 6 miles wide, already patrolled by UN monitors? Would there be a larger buffer zone, as far as the Litani River, 20 miles north of the border, the area Israel's talked of clearing of Hezbollah? Or could a new force have a still wider role, disarming Hezbollah wherever it operates, including in its strongholds of southern Beirut and the Bekaa Valley in the east of the country?
It is very important that the international community will decide on such a mandate which will allow the forces really immediately deploy themselves and have all the power to implement the United Nations resolution, which has to also be, part of it will be to confront the Hezbollah in order to dismantle this organization, this terror organization, and of course to control the border between Israel and Lebanon, which will be part of the Lebanese army, and to make sure that the weapons which are being shipped from Iran through Syria to the Hezbollah will be stopped once and for all.
The existing UN force in Lebanon had too weak a mandate to stop Hezbollah. Israel suggested an EU-led intervention, but something only NATO with its clearer command structures would be strong enough.
NATO is the ideal that can bring the Americans and the Europeans, and it has also the trust of regional players like Turkey, that's a member of NATO. NATO is the only viable force that can not just keep the peace, but enforce the peace.
What's crucial is to avoid what happened in 1983. Then the suicide bombing of US and French barracks in Beirut killed almost 300 soldiers in an international peacekeeping force. Now, unless a new force is established with Hezbollah agreement, which will be hard to achieve, there'll be a risk of similar attacks again.
Israel expects any international force that goes into South Lebanon to get involved in the war. It can't get involved in the war if it has an inadequate set of rules of engagement. And equally, Hezbollah, Lebanon, Syria, perhaps Iran as well, won't allow force in to South Lebanon that actually has rules of engagement.
Tonight, Israeli anti-war protesters demonstrated as Condoleezza Rice arrived in Jerusalem. Pressure for an end to the war will grow if allegations of war crimes increase. But for now, America's still intent on a complete package to stop the conflict, not a quick fix.
If we have learned anything, it is that any peace is going to have to be based on enduring principles and not on temporary solutions.
Meanwhile, tonight Israel continued its incursions into Lebanon. There'll be no major advances on the diplomatic front, at least until Wednesday, when Arab leaders meet Dr. Rice in Rome. The ceasefire the Lebanese so badly want isn't coming for some time yet.
Well, just before we came on the air, I spoke to Tariq Mitri, a Lebanese cabinet minister who was recently the acting foreign minister. I asked him if Secretary Rice had brought a plan with her to Beirut.
I don't think she had a plan. She had ideas. We have ideas too, and I think what has happened was an exchange of ideas on how best, as far as we're concerned, how best and how soonest we can reach a ceasefire. We have a number of building blocks, as you may call them, for a political solution, but much of the emphasis on our part needs to be on the ceasefire. The country continues to be victim of a collective punishment, and civilian population is suffering tremendously in every part of the country. Secretary Rice had ideas. I don't think she put on the table a proposal. She's come to Lebanon before going to Israel, and therefore she kind of alluded that she needed more time before she could package a proposal in the full sense of the word.
Let me ask you a couple of specifics. Firstly, would you welcome the deployment of a new international force in southern Lebanon?
You know, our government has stated unequivocally that it would like to see the National Army exercise both its duty and responsibility.
But you see the problem. You see the problem, Mr. Mitri.
But at the same time, we have asked for cooperation, for support from the international community through the United Nations force.
But, Mr. Mitri, there has been a United Nations force in the south of Lebanon. It has demonstrably failed to keep the peace. If the Lebanese army was in a position to do... Yes, if the Lebanese army had been in a position to restrain Hezbollah, you wouldn't be in the mess you're in now.
Now, things as they are now need to be radically revisited. When we're talking about a United Nations force, we are talking about a United Nations force whose mandate is to be revised and whose scope would be widened. So we're not talking about the UNIFIL as it stands now.
Right. What about a NATO force?
It has not been proposed to us. I think we would like to see a genuine international force under the UN umbrella.
If there were a proposal that Hezbollah hand over the two captured Israeli soldiers into the safekeeping of the Lebanese government, would the Lebanese government then be prepared to return them to Israel?
We're not there yet. It's probably one of the issues that should be part of the package that the political package and the various arrangements attached to it concomitant to the declaration of ceasefire. That's our understanding.
Does the Lebanese government accept any responsibility at all for the fact that this conflict is taking place? I mean, the problem was caused by forces operating inside Lebanon.
You know, I mean, everybody who knows a bit about Lebanon knows that our government for a full year had been engaged in a dialogue, in a political dialogue, because Hezbollah is not just a small military organization that operates in the south. It's also a political movement with members in parliament, and it's represented in government. And we were trying to associate everybody in the political process, hoping that this would lead to the exercise of the central government authority over the national territory. But
it didn't work, did it?
It didn't work. Yes, it did not work, but it was in the making.
Mr. Mitri, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.